Yesterday, surprising news in the international media upended all analyses. It's a new peace plan in Ukraine. Leaks say that America and Russia have both agreed to this plan and have put their initial signatures on it. But what's strange is that this plan came right after the meeting between Macron and Zelensky this week. It was said that this meeting angered Trump, and it was said that it opened the door to a much bigger deal than what appeared today in the world. And today, for the first time, the details of this plan, which includes 28 points, have been leaked. It alters the war map, Ukraine's future, and the East-West balance. According to international sources, this plan represents the biggest shift in the course of the war since it began, because it simply fulfills most or all of the conditions that Russia has demanded since day one. What exactly are these terms? Is it really a peace plan, or is it a plan for Ukraine's surrender? Will Europe agree to this plan? We have important details today. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing, in this episode of the Opinion Series. Yesterday, dear viewers, there was a surprising event as many international media outlets revealed the contents of a new peace plan in Ukraine, which was approved by both America and Russia together. So it's very clear that the preliminary deal that came during this week, which brought together French President Macron and Ukrainian President Zelensky, referred to the Rafale jet deal. It was never approved by America. In fact, it even angered Trump. Perhaps this is what made the American administration take this important step with the Russians today to adopt a new peace plan. The important thing is that this plan consists of 28 points, all of these points meet the Russian demands. All of these points meet Russia's conditions to stop this war since day one. Among the contents of this plan, we find that it talks about the withdrawal of the Ukrainian army from all areas of Donetsk and Luhansk, which Russia is demanding and which are still under Ukrainian control to this day. If this agreement happens, Ukraine will withdraw from these areas, and thus the first Russian condition will be fulfilled. The main Russian condition for stopping this war will be achieved. At that point, the condition that Zelensky always said would never happen, that it would never be final, that it would never happen. He always said that Ukraine would not give up even a single inch of Ukrainian land. So once this Russian condition is met, this would be a sweeping victory for Russia. This means that in the end, Zelensky has given in to the most important Russian demand. He emerges defeated after more than 3 years since the war began. And this is just the first point, so pay close attention to the other points I'll talk about today. The second point was revealed by international newspapers yesterday. As part of this peace plan, we find that Ukraine will be obligated, according to this agreement, to officially recognize that Crimea is Russian territory and to recognize that the Donbas region is also Russian territory. That means recognizing Russian sovereignty over these territories, which means that officially Russia's borders will change. Russia will gain new territories under its sovereignty, meaning it will exceed 130,000 square kilometers in area. Almost meaning it will gain land the size of North Korea or about the size of Greece, just so everyone knows. I mean, this is also considered a sweeping victory for Russia. This will be recorded in history. I mean, it will be written in all history books that Russia did not enter this war, which lasted for 3 years or more, without any benefit or without any notable gains. On the contrary, it came out of it with many gains. The most important of these gains is gaining sovereignty over these lands, acquiring new territories, and gaining sovereignty over these lands. The third point that also came in this plan also talks about the fact that The strength of the Ukrainian army will be reduced to only 50% of its current strength, meaning half of this force will disappear. Meaning if Ukraine currently has about 250,000 soldiers, it means that after this agreement, this number must be reduced to about 120,000 soldiers only. More than that. The fourth point that came in this plan states that Ukraine is obligated to give up a number of main weapons as well, meaning that the Ukrainian army will always be weak, worn out, and pose no threat in the region, not even able to defend its own territory in the future. In fact, more than that, when it is discussed about the necessity of giving up the main weapons. This might even mean that the Rafale fighter jet deal we talked about in the previous episode, which was agreed upon this week, will not happen at all. And this confirms two things. Either Trump wanted a similar deal with Ukraine, and Macron took it from him. So he's taking revenge on Macron this way. Or that Macron knew there was a plan being cooked up in secret between the Russians and the Americans. So he created this propaganda. Because he knows that in the first place there won't be a deal. Because in the end, France, as I said in the previous episode, can never provide its most advanced military technologies. The Rafale jet to the testing field with the Russians. So this is the fourth point. The fifth point in this plan also talks about withdrawing any Ukrainian request to join NATO. Let's pay close attention here. This is one of the most important Russian victories in history books. Because when we go back a little and look at the reasons for the outbreak of this war, we find that the West, well, Russia had started, or rather, the Western countries had begun steps to include Ukraine in NATO, but Russia was strongly opposed to that. The West or Ukraine did not pay attention to this Russian rejection. So what happened, this war, these victories, and so on. So if this fifth Russian condition is actually achieved, this means that Russia's main war goal has been achieved. The main Russian objective of this military operation, as Russia calls it today, has indeed been achieved. And this also means that today Ukraine is fulfilling the Russian demand that it initially rejected, fulfilling the Russian demand. After all Ukrainian resources have been destroyed, after it has become drowned in debt, after its own economy has been ruined, after it has lost about 25% of its territory. This will be a very important lesson for the rest of the countries in the world, for the rest of the world leaders. From the beginning, Ukraine should have played for independence, played for regional balance between the West and Russia, especially since geographically it is located right in the middle between the two. So why did it choose to be an enemy of Russia? Why is that? This is the strongest evidence showing this Ukrainian administration was infiltrated by the West. Zelensky was an agent for a Western country, possibly France, Britain, or another nation. That means they made him. And they supported him so he could become the president of Ukraine to confront Russia. But in the end, they gave Russia the opportunity to become strong. Until today, it has reached this level of power. So Zelensky was convincing the Ukrainian people that Ukraine joining NATO would be tied to Ukraine joining the European Union. That's what he always used to say. And so he was convincing the Ukrainian people that the decision was sound, important, and would open up opportunities and prosperity for them, and so on. But in the end, it only brought them destruction and displacement. If the Europeans were smart or truly wanted good for the Ukrainians, they would have admitted Ukraine to the European Union first, not to NATO. They should have left the decision to join NATO for later. For a while, I mean after ensuring strength and stability and so on. But they only wanted to push it into this war. They just wanted to use it as a pawn or to play with it in this matter. So the important thing is that this is a very important lesson that we should all learn from today. This is the fifth point, withdrawing any request for Ukraine to join NATO. The sixth point also talks about Ukraine receiving security guarantees from America, meaning America will guarantee Ukraine's security. The seventh point talks about prohibiting the deployment of any foreign forces in Ukraine, meaning this strikes down all these European efforts that talk about French forces, British forces or others being deployed in Ukraine to guarantee security. This will not happen. If this plan is actually adopted, this is another point as well. It will be another victory point for the Russians. The eighth point is also preventing Ukraine from receiving any foreign long-range weapons that extend deep into Russia. And this point, as I said at the beginning, falls within the framework of making the Ukrainian army a paper army, a weak army with clipped wings. It has nothing and poses no threat to Russia or any other country in the region. So all these points confirm Russia's victory. But the point that really caught my attention, subscribe to the channel, was the ninth point. This point talks about forcing Ukraine to make Russian an official language of the state. Just imagine forcing a country to adopt this language as an official language of the state. This means going back to the time before the collapse of the Soviet Union. Even though during that period the Ukrainian language existed as a national language, Russian was the dominant language in administration, the military, education, media, the economy, and so on. So Ukraine took a big step toward real independence. But Zelensky wasted everything. He wasted this opportunity. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and Russian was imposed on it. The Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine gained independence, adopted Ukrainian, but Zelensky squandered it. Now it will be forced on Ukrainians again. That means going back to adopting the Russian language again, because Russia wants that. It wants to return the situation there to that period, bringing back the Russian language again as an official language. So this point is very important for Russia. Why? Because it will guarantee Russia the return of Russian influence again. It will guarantee Russia cultural influence. In Ukraine, it's just the beginning. This cultural influence is always the start, the entry point, the entry towards expanding the circle of economic influence, and then comes the political influence. And speaking of this, let's also mention the 10th point in this plan talks about forcing Ukraine to grant official status to the Russian Orthodox Church. And this will also give Russia another influence on the religious level. So it's a plan that America is actually presenting tailored for the Russians, and the Russians deserve it today. Why? Because they are the winning side, and peace can never be achieved just by something from the winning side. It's absolutely impossible. I mean, the winning side is the one that sets the conditions. So what does all this mean? We're talking about a plan. One side has American approval, another side has Russian approval, but there's still another party. Not talking about Ukraine, there's another side, the European side, the war party in Europe. Will Macron agree to this plan? No, absolutely not. I don't think so. Or will Starmer agree to this plan? I don't think so. Will Germany agree? So the peace plan is still probably somewhat far off, especially when we talk about these three countries in particular. So if someone wants to know the European opinion on this plan, they just need to look at the Ukrainian opinion or the Ukrainian responses. Today, the Ukrainians, meaning Sasa and others, have made many statements criticizing this plan. The Ukrainians said this plan will never be implemented without a comprehensive fundamental change. And of course, if this change that the Ukrainians are talking about happens in this plan, then Russia will not accept it. That means the war will continue, the war will go on. But there is something strange. Maybe it will make us reconsider our analysis, because the American newspaper Axios said that the head of the National Security Council in Ukraine, this person, Amrov, who was in negotiations with the Americans, said that he agreed to this plan. Is this true? Does he actually agree to the plan? Does his agreement to the plan mean Zelensky's agreement, or is there an internal conflict today? Is there another internal conflict now emerging between Zelensky and some of his own people, or what does this mean? Could this bring us closer to a scenario where Zelensky is removed? There is a fact something is being cooked up behind the scenes, but up until now, up until this moment, the picture is not completely clear today. The American newspaper Politico, it said that the American generals who are visiting Ukraine today came only to present this plan to the Ukrainians and convince them of the next steps. What is this plan? The newspaper mentioned something. It was discussed in previous episodes, and I said that it might be the closest option now, so what did it say? It said that the next steps include removing Zelensky and forming a national salvation government in Ukraine. Whether this is true will be clear in the coming hours. Regardless of Ukraine's situation with this plan, the main point remains. Will Europe accept? What will the European response be? France, for example, is still talking about a major war, and there are still preparations for a major war against the Russians. All the statements are about Russia, the Russian threat, the possible Russian attack, which is getting closer day by day. Today there was a serious statement from the Chief of Staff of the Army in France, General Fabien Menden. What did he say? Maybe we've talked about it over and over. Maybe everyone is convinced of it today. But what's new this time is that he said it officially. I mean, it came officially from the top official in the French army. And it really came as an admission. So what did he say? He said that France has the economic power and the demographic power to face the Russians. But it does not have the courage. It does not have the courage to expose itself to harm. What does this mean? It means that France is capable of facing Russia, but it does not have the courage to endure the number of Russian missiles that would fall on these French cities and the French capital, Paris. The French army, when it used to enter wars or battles, I mean, he used to plan that against armed groups, not against a strong organized army. He used to plan that against armed groups in certain distant areas, marginalized and poor regions in Africa or the Middle East or elsewhere. I mean, armed groups that have no military capabilities at all. But when he faces a strong regular army, like the Russian army, this country, I mean France, will never be able to bear losses in lives at all. The French are used to security, prosperity, parties, loving life, and so on. If just one missile falls on Paris, you'll see millions of displaced people. Unlike the Russians. First, the Russians have multiple experiences from various wars. Second, they haven't lived in prosperity like the Europeans. Third, as well, the Russian people are made up of different ethnicities that are ready for all possible scenarios. You find the Russian people are a mix of Tatars, Turks, Muslim Caucasian peoples, and the Mongolian people. These are people who adapt to any circumstances no matter what. They have a strong belief. So the Europeans are planning and want a major war against the Russians, but at the same time they are not ready at all for this war. Today Trump comes up with this plan, the plan for Ukraine's surrender. This is the best solution. There is a statement by retired United States Army Colonel Daniel Davis said that Trump will soon tell the Europeans that the game is over. That's it. He said that America has started to impose its conditions on both Ukraine and Europe, meaning there is no other solution left except to accept Trump's new plan. So today the question is, will Europe accept or not? Answer us in the comments below this video, and don't forget to subscribe. Click the like button. Peace be upon you and God's mercy. See you next time.